There's a light in the sky, rising in the air. There's a feeling so strong. It's time to light the fire, like a bright shining light. Learn, getting more out of life. Love, sharing time with friends, feeling so strong.
Hello and welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and here, as always, with my great friend Joe Stanley. Welcome, Joe.
Always awesome to be here with you, Darcy. I just love it and we're very lucky, don't you think?
Very lucky indeed. Always feel lucky to be here with you, Joe, and lucky to just be on the House of Wellness every week.
I agree. And can you believe it? It's November. I feel like I blinked and missed a few months in the middle there, I've got to say.
It has gone quick, hasn't it? The impact of those months where we were closed down is still playing out, though, Joe. The number of people surviving cardiac arrest during lockdown in Victoria has dropped by half, which is a shocking statistic. So we'll get hands-on today and deliver some life-saving tips on CPR and first aid.
It seems mums are right when they tell you to eat your greens, but what mums don't know is how much more important it is for them to get stuck into Brussels sprouts and broccoli as well.
We're approaching fire season, Joe, and what's been achieved on Kangaroo Island since it was decimated by fires earlier this year is simply incredible. Some good news there from the ashes, which is great.
And Dr. Nick will breathe new life into the science of hiccups with a home remedy he swears works wonders.
I don't get the hiccups so much anymore, but used to pretty regularly as a kid, Joe, and it just very, very upsetting, the hiccups for me. First up, let's talk about the affairs of the heart, though. Survivors of cardiac arrest in Victoria used to be amongst the highest of anywhere in the world, but not anymore. The numbers have dropped because of the pandemic.
Pre-COVID, lives were saved because someone nearby, trained in first aid, performed CPR until the ambulance arrived, which got us thinking that if everyone knew CPR, then even if we're confined to our homes, there would always be someone to jump in if needed.
Yeah, about 25,000 people have a cardiac arrest out of hospital every year. If ever there's a good reason to sign up to learn basic first aid, that is it right there. And it's something that was learned firsthand by a Melbourne mother and her son in September last year. Take a look.
Well, I was working in my studio, teaching. And at the end of the workshop, I fainted. I've never fainted before. I just dropped to the floor very quickly. It would have only been for about 30 seconds because the students were still standing in the same spot when I was talking to them. And I felt fine afterwards, and I thought I'll keep going and get ready for my next afternoon workshop. And in the meantime, my father, I called and he recommended I see a doctor. So I called to make a doctor's appointment, and I figured I could have time to get to the doctors and back ready for my next workshop. So I was about to drive in my car to take myself to the doctors, and as I left, Angus came home and said, "Mum, you're not driving." So he took me to the doctors, and on the way I said, "Oh, look, I feel faint." He said, "Hold my hand," and squeeze my hand. And I did. And then I stopped squeezing, apparently, and and then he looked around and I'd turned blue. We were stopped at a red light in the middle of Nepean Highway in Mornington, and he looked to make sure everything was safe and just pulled me straight onto the road and immediately started CPR.
So, Angus, for you, you're driving in traffic and you're aware your mum's not feeling well. And how did it unfold for you?
For me, it started when she didn't squeeze back, and as soon as I knew she wasn't, I checked her, and as she said, she turned pretty much purple instantly. And instead of freaking out and reacting emotionally, I pretty much just went into fight or flight and checked my surroundings. The process was get out of the car, get someone else to call 000, go around to the passenger side, get her out, start CPR ASAP. And I'm sure other people would explain it in the same way, in that you don't have an order or a process. It just happens instinctively. And yeah, I just didn't stop until someone told me to stop, and they pulled me away. And that's when it hit me.
Apparently, also in the traffic was a St John's ambulance, and they just had a new defibrillator that they'd just been trained to use. So after Angus kept the oxygen going to my brain, they did the defibrillator and back I came.
So you had only recently done a CPR course. Why was that?
I've had my CPR since 2010 or 2011 when I was a referee, but I only recently did it about a week or two before Mum's accident because I needed it as a refresher for working in the workplace I was in. So, yeah.
I have to say, learning CPR is one thing, but remaining calm is such a stressful situation, especially when it's your mum, is a totally different thing. That's pretty amazing to me.
For sure. The last person you'd expect to do that for, if at all, in your lifetime.
It's very courageous.
When you say it totally hit you after someone came and dragged you away from her, describe that for me. What do you mean by then it hit me?
The version of me that was saving Mum disappeared instantly when I sat down at a car just off to the side. And then the original me came back and I couldn't stop staring at Mum on the floor, just, I guess, kind of getting resuscitated. And there was like 3 or 4 other people around me talking to me, and I don't think I could hear them. All I could really see was what was happening. And
are you surprised at how easily that CPR training came to mind for you in that moment?
Yeah, it was like eating cereal in the morning. Like, it was that easy to do. Yeah, it was pretty easy to do. It's just not worrying about the outcome and just doing your best in the moment is pretty critical for doing any kind of CPR.
So that's testament to how well trained you were.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I passed the course, so.
Wow. Do you still shake your head at the fact that because of your quick actions, your mum survived?
A lot of people have told me that I could die happy now because of what I did, and I get it. But, you know, to have the I wouldn't call it an opportunity, but for the opportunity, I'm pretty happy that it went the way it went. And we couldn't have got a better outcome post-accident either. When she was in the hospital, we were working out the averages of success or luck that someone in her position would have had, and it was less than a 5% chance to be, first of all, surviving the incident and having the response we did from St. John's and a first responder, which was me, and also not having any brain damage once recovered in the hospital. So absolutely no brain damage, remembers everything. She remembers how awesome her son is, first and foremost, and me, not the other son. And yeah, everything was pretty swimmingly after that. Yeah.
Manuela, was there a moment where you actually thanked him? I mean, what do you say to your son who saved your life?
That's right. What do you say? You just be grateful.
It's very, very beautiful and really remarkable and I think, you know, a true gift. So for people who are thinking about doing CPR training, Angus, what would be your advice to them?
Please do it, 100%. If you get the opportunity while you're through high school, even to get in as early as you can, I 100% recommend it. I've always had it, so I don't really see a reason not to have it, which is a good argument for doing anything, you know. Get it done.
Definitely.
And yeah, you'll give someone else or someone you love or someone else that is loved a chance at life again.
So CPR itself stands for cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and it's a matter of completing compressions and breath in order to pump the heart, pump the blood around the body to keep the vital organs alive. It's certainly a life-saving skill. And, you know, when it's needed, it comes down to, look, there's lots of different emergency situations where someone can become unconscious and stop breathing. And they're the two things. If someone is unconscious and not breathing, that is the time to start your CPR.
From your experience, how have you seen people respond in a crisis when it's actually someone that they know?
Yeah, very sad sort of situations, aren't they? But it's quite interesting to see and to hear the stories of how people in these situations, it's amazing how the body and the mind really does work. Adrenaline kicks in and people just go for it. They know they need help, they jump in and they really do, majority of the time, do a really good job. Because, look, any attempt is better than no attempt. And if you've had some training, it's amazing how the memory just kicks in and you can apply those skills. So Look, most people are certainly very scared or a bit worried at the time, and later they sort of think, oh my God, I can't believe I was able to do that. Did I do the right thing? But it sort of just happens in the moment. And if you've done the training, like I say, a lot of the time it works out much, much better for the person. So, yeah.
And now you're conducting these courses online. Can you explain how a CPR course might work remotely?
Yeah, sure. So at St John Ambulance Victoria, we now have our 100% virtual classes up and running for your CPR and for your first aid training, which is excellent because it's super easy, it's nice and safe, people are comfortable at homes. And yeah, all you need to do is you do a little bit of pre-learning prior to coming to the class. And once the day has arrived, you simply log in and you are in your virtual classroom with your live trainer. You can complete all the practical tasks there, ask the questions, look at the demonstrations. There is a pack that you receive in the mail to make sure that you've got all the right resources, and you use those resources in order to learn as best you can over the period of time. And then there's a few questions at the end, the theory questions that people complete on their smart device. So all in all, it's a very simple way to do things, and yet, yeah, people are nice and safe, comfortable at home doing it.
Because I remember years ago when I did my CPR training, there was a model that I had to practice on. Are we able to learn CPR without that model, the dummy?
Yeah, the dummy. So, yeah, without the mannequins, obviously that would be very difficult to do. So we actually do send you out a pack where you have an inflatable mannequin so that you can still use the right equipment. Yeah, it's very important to know how to do, for example, CPR on the right sort of situation rather than, without anything. So, yes, we send you out the right resources for that.
How many lives do you estimate have been saved by giving CPR?
They estimate for 2018 to 2019, there was over 6,500 out-of-hospital cardiovascular arrests, and that's still your heart attacks and your strokes and things like that, which is a huge number for Victoria. And from that, they say 39% of those who received the CPR did survive. So, yeah, it's a big numbers out there, but it's the most important thing is to know that if you see a situation like that, you start CPR, any attempt's better than no attempt, and they certainly have a much higher chance of surviving if you do something rather than nothing.
Oh, what an incredible story, an amazing effort, Jo. It makes you want to be proficient in CPR. Have you actually done the training?
I have done the training, but it was a long time ago, and certainly the message there is about doing your refresher, because I don't think I'd be very confident if I had to act, in an emergency.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've learnt before, but a long, long time ago. So you feel like a refresher course would be worthwhile.
Yeah, so St John's goal is to save more lives by having everyone trained in CPR. As Katie just said, virtual courses are being offered online for the first time. So head to the St John's website to book a lesson.
From saving human lives to rescuing millions of animals affected by this year's bushfires, we've got an update on the recovery of Kangaroo Island right after this on the House of Wellness. We all remember the devastating bushfires that consumed the nation last summer. Around 18 million hectares of land was burnt and billions, yes, that's billions of animals lost their lives, Jo.
It was just such a distressing thing to watch and made us all feel really powerless just watching so much of our beautiful wilderness go up in flames.
South Australia's Kangaroo Island was one of the hardest hit. Half the island was burnt and it was the native habitat for some Australian icons that was devastated, including the local echidna, the glossy black cockatoo and, of course, the koala.
Out of an estimated 55,000 koalas on the island, only around 10,000 remain. And to make matters worse, 85% of the blue gum plantations they call home were destroyed. But glimmers of hope and green are now emerging from the gloom.
The entire bushfire scenario was absolutely just something we've never experienced before and hopefully we'll never experience again. For a lot of people, it was extremely traumatic. There is things that people will keep with them for the rest of their lives.
Dana Mitchell and her husband Sam run the Kangaroo Island Wildlife Park. While people on the island were being evacuated, they stayed, rescuing native animals that also call Kangaroo Island home.
So during the fires and in the months that followed after that, it was just over 600 koalas come through from properties right around the Western End. Our biggest day for rescues, we had about 68 koalas come in. Every single one that came in that was burnt was also dehydrated, and if they had been out there for quite a few days, they were in quite poor condition from not having anything to eat or drink for a few days as well. So a lot of them were starving, a lot of them were dehydrated.
80% of the koala population perished. The Curran family knew they had to help.
It was a really horrific time. The ground was really hot out there, so a lot of the animals were on the ground at that stage, just waiting. That was the sad thing. The koalas, they don't seem to go and help themselves. They'll just sit on the ground in the hot ash. It was full on, but you couldn't not do it.
The Currans are just an absolutely incredible local family. During the bushfires, they saved nearly 150 koalas. Countless kangaroos, wallabies brought in, possums, pretty much anything they could find. They were out there every single day looking for wildlife to rescue, to bring in here to get treated.
She's definitely bigger.
Lola was rescued by the Currans. 8 months after the ordeal, she's ready to be released back into the wild.
She had superficial burns on 3 out of 4 of her feet, so did require bandaging in the initial stages. She was bottle fed for a little bit to make sure she was gaining that weight. Then she came outside and joined the rest of the Joeys, which were that little bit bigger. And now that she's finally at release weight, she'll be getting to go home today. Lola has always been a little feisty girl. She's always been very feisty to keepers and doing what she wants, Little Miss Independent, so it's really good to see. Come on. Good girl. So the Currans have been on a couple of releases with us with koalas, but they haven't actually released one that they rescued themselves yet. So to actually be able to release one that they've rescued themselves is going to be pretty special to them, I think. Well, hopefully she'll go straight up the tree that we've chosen for her, but you never know with these guys. Sometimes they say no and go choose their own one.
Yeah, hopefully she'll find a nice spot in the tree where she can chill out and get some food.
She looks pretty happy.
She does look happy. So to see them happy and healthy and be able to go out and start their own families is just amazing. Yeah, and yeah, emotional but happy.
As nature does its bit regenerating the charred landscape, the emotional scars from what happened here will take some time to heal.
It was a really horrific time here on KI, and it's still not over. There's still, like, even at the park, they've got so many koalas still and other animals from the fires that are still being cared for. It's scary to think that we've already come nearly full circle to that time again. I think for everybody it's going to be a bit emotional and no one's going to really know what to expect, but hopefully it's a positive outcome this year.
Yeah, can you say bye-bye, Lola?
Bye-bye, Lola.
Lola's story does give us hope, plus a number of other native animals are showing positive signs. Everyone is confident that koala and kangaroo populations will recover as their habitat returns. We really hope that's the case.
Yeah, that is great news, Jo. The Kangaroo Island Wildlife Park has helped hundreds of koalas return to the wild and is now open again for visitors. It is a beautiful place, such a magnificent part of South Australia. I lived there for a long time, Jo. Didn't get to Kangaroo Island, but went back about 5 or 6 years ago. It is just a magical part of the world. So anyone who's able to travel there, I encourage you, go and check out Kangaroo Island.
Yeah. From rehabilitating bushfire-affected wildlife to restoring hope in people that may have lost theirs. Up next, how to train yourself in mental health first aid right here on the House of Wellness.
Welcome back. We talk a lot about mental health here on the House of Wellness. And while the pandemic hit hard, it came right off the back of the bushfires that left so many people reeling. There was no time to heal, Jo.
Yeah, both brought anxiety, financial stress and isolation, which has taken a huge toll on people's mental health. Earlier, we talked about the importance of knowing CPR in order to save lives. St John's is offering online first aid courses, and so is the organisation Living Works Australia. The difference is their focus is on first aid for mental health and suicide prevention. Shane, you call your program Suicide First Aid. Why?
Look, our message is that anyone can learn the skills to help save a life. And just like physical first aid, where we all need to know the skills for CPR in case there is an emergency, not many people realise that it can be the same for suicide thoughts. So all of us can learn how to help someone to stay safe in their worst case of crisis. Wouldn't it be great if we had a situation in Australia where people had the skills, if someone around us was thinking of suicide, that someone would ask and people would connect and get the help they need.
Can you explain exactly what your service does?
It's inevitable that at any point in time, we're going to be in touch with someone who's thinking about suicide. It's just whether or not we'll know. Or if we are maybe concerned and think that actually it might get to that point, will we know what to do about it? Part of the skills that we teach at Living Works take people through a process so that we don't need to feel like we're just winging it and just running on our own. We've got a model that we can work with. We've got a plan that we use, and so that gives people confidence, I think, to be able to raise the issue in the first place, because we know that if we ask someone, "Are you okay?" and they say, "Well, no, I'm not," okay, we need to know what to do next and be calm and confident in that.
Is it about understanding what to say, or is it also about recognising behaviour?
One of the key things that we need people to understand is what to really be vigilant and be looking out for in people around us is that change in behaviour. There are ways that people invite help, and we use that language in invitations for help because, we don't like the idea of warning signs and things that you often hear. Is that let's see it as an invitation that someone is giving us through their behaviour, the things they're saying, or the things that are happening in their life. It's an opportunity for us to have that conversation. And so we spend a lot of time in our training talking about what are some of the things that we know to be true in terms of precursors or invitations to suicide thoughts. And then how can we use those as a way of starting a conversation to keep people safer now?
Well, it's understanding that people who are in crisis often feel like they can't ask for help.
It's so true. Yeah, and it can be so difficult, I think, for people with the things like the stigma and taboo around suicide to actually raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm struggling here," and it's even gotten to that point, but I don't know who to trust. There's a culture, isn't there, of us saying, "You'll be right, mate," or "It's okay," or things will get better. But if you don't feel that and you're not in that space, then you just often need someone to listen and to connect and care. And so that's what we train at Living Works.
What are some of the good ways to respond if we do know someone is in a dark place?
Look, for us, one of the best ways to respond is by listening, is to really to open up the conversation. And really, we talk about things like saying what you see. Hey, I've noticed that this is happening for you. And sometimes when people are there, they're also thinking about suicide. Is that true for you? And if it is, I'm here to listen.
I have an 11-year-old daughter who's heading into adolescence, and I'm really concerned about, whatever challenges lie ahead for her. And I want to speak with her about this, but how do we talk to children and adolescents about suicide?
It's about being really open and honest about that conversation. I think we're really encouraging, parents particularly, but also working with teachers and school community and students themselves to be able to do the training and get the skills. Because often young people will reach out to each other and to their peers, and we don't want young people feeling like they need to keep secrets or ill-equipped to be able to support their friends.
Well, it's a tricky area, Joe, because as Shane said, suicide is still treated as an uncomfortable topic not to be talked about. But we know from the experts that is not what we should do. We need to have more open discussions about suicide. So, important thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing the right thing to say to someone at risk is just as crucial. Yeah. Plus, being open about the topic with our kids. It can feel really difficult because you don't want to feel like you're putting dark thoughts into kids' minds, but teaching them to talk about and look after their mental health early and know the warning signs will help save lives. Head to the Living Works website to sign up for one of their online classes. And if you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, talk to someone you trust. Groups like Lifeline and Beyond Blue are always on hand to help.
How many people count on you each day? Let's take a minute to think about it. How many people know you're there to support them? Your friends, your family members, your co-workers, even someone you've just met. At work, at home, and at play. People count on us for a lot of things. So what if someone was counting on you for help with the biggest issue of all? The fact is, around 1 in 25 people are thinking about suicide at any given time. If one of them needed your help to stay safe and alive, would you know what to do? That's where Living Work Start comes in. In just 90 minutes, this interactive online training will prepare you with the knowledge and skills to save a life. With engaging simulations and lifetime resources, Living Work Start is your way to make a world of difference for someone. Because you never know who's going to need you, but with Living Work Start, you'll be prepared.
When it comes to getting a bad rap, I think it's fair to say that broccoli, spinach, Brussels sprouts are the pariahs of the vegetable world, Joe. A lot of people are not fans, particularly Brussels sprouts. They're pretty hard to handle. How do you go with them?
Yeah, I don't mind them with lots of butter and lots of garlic so that you can't really taste them. But they're part of the cruciferous group of veggies. That includes kale, that one that sits in your fridge wilting because you just don't even know what to do with it. And while us mums nag our kids to eat the cauliflower and the broccoli and the cabbage, Australian scientists have found that it's actually the mums who need to take their own advice. You talk of cruciferous vegetables. Explain to us, what are they and what's so great about them?
So they're your vegetables that include broccoli, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower. They are full of nutrients and what we call plant chemicals that have added benefits to our health, that lower inflammation and also reduce oxidative stress in our bodies.
Why are those benefits specifically effective in older women?
Cruciferous vegetables are quite rich in vitamin K, and vitamin K has been linked to slowing the progression of calcification on our arteries. And so because we saw that women consuming higher amounts of cruciferous vegetables had a lower odds of extensive calcification build-up, we think maybe that vitamin K may be playing a part here.
So what sorts of quantities are we talking? How much of these vegetables should we be eating?
So in our study, we found just as little as a quarter of a cup of cooked cruciferous vegetables or half a cup of raw cruciferous vegetables every day had that associated lower odds of extensive calcification in our arteries, along with a wide variety of other vegetables in our diet can have added benefits.
You talk about calcification. Can you explain that in layman's terms?
So it's a process where in our blood vessels we get a build-up of fatty substances and calcium deposits in the inner layer of our arteries. And these fatty deposits with calcium built up in them are called atherosclerotic plaques. And these plaques, if they rupture, they can clog our blood supply to the heart or the brain, leading to a heart attack or a stroke.
It's an important message because the older women I know seem largely to eat cake. So what message would you like to give to women of a certain age as far as their diet is concerned?
Oh, I know we all like to have a piece of cake every now and then, and it's probably okay in moderation, but trying to swap that cake for maybe some veggie sticks and hummus. I know it's not the same, but it can have added benefits, but it's okay to have a piece of cake every now and then.
One man who doesn't need convincing about the power of a plant-based diet is Luke Hines to add perfect peas to the list of must-have veggies.
Teagues, I got to say, it is so good to have you in the kitchen here with me today because when it comes to healthy cooking and clean eating, you and I are like two peas in a pod, which works out well because I've actually made a buttery pea smash to pair up with my crispy skinned salmon.
Oh, that sounds delicious, Heinzie. Funny story about peas. My mum used to dish them up to me every second night and I would sit there for hours refusing to eat them. But nowadays, I actually really enjoy them as a side dish for my dinner.
I'm like the complete opposite. When I was a kid, I was so excited to load the peas up onto my fork and take a massive mouthful. But for anyone watching at home, don't use your fingers and play with peas. I love them. They can complement any dish. I mean, I can't think of a meal that wouldn't be better by adding peas. Breakfast, lunch or dinner. Plus, they're packed with vitamins A, C, K, iron, fibre, the list goes on.
And don't forget, Heinzie, the humble pea not only has all these amazing benefits, but is low in calories. So, if you pair them with a dish like this, like the salmon you've got today, they can be really great for weight management. And you wouldn't think so because they're a plant, but a 100-calorie serving of peas contains just as much protein, if not more, than a whole egg.
That comes in handy too because protein is so important for muscle building and repair after exercise, plus just part of a healthy diet or lifestyle.
Absolutely, Heinzie. And exploring plant protein can be a great option for vegans and for vegetarians, or just for gals like me, because they're much easier to digest, which can be great for preventing bloating.
Tell you what, no food babies for us.
And you can also get the most out of a natural pea protein through a powdered supplement form, which has around 18 amino acids. So if you don't have time to cook up an amazing dish like this one, you can pop it in your shakes and your smoothies.
I'm so glad you mentioned amino acids because they're pretty much responsible for every bodily function. We're talking growth and development, healing and repair, digestion and energy production. So it's a massive win from me.
Speaking of winning, Heinzie, I feel like I'm the true winner for being the taste tester of this protein-rich dish today. You're such a sweet pea for making this for me.
Well, don't get too excited as long as you're happy to do the dishes.
Of course. Looks delish.
The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by Vital Protein, an all-natural, high-quality pea protein formula with no added nasties.
Welcome back. Slip, slop, slap is a slogan that we know back to front, Joe, and it was a campaign that has really worked and cut through.
Oh, it really was. And when they get it right, the messaging is just so powerful. Remember Life Be In It? When we were growing up with Norm, he was a superstar. I remember it so clearly. He's long gone, but that message has survived.
I've just got big stomach bones.
And Norm was great, Joe. It takes me straight back to my childhood. Growing up, he was on your TV screens every week. And I think a lot of guys could relate to him back in the day.
Yeah, so when it comes to sending a clear message, you couldn't get any more real than Olympic swim star Kate Campbell, who's represented Australia at 3 Olympics and 2 Commonwealth Games. Kate's made a career spending time in the sun, and in 2018 she experienced a potentially deadly melanoma scare. Her goal is to educate everyone to wear the right sunscreen every time they leave the house.
It's kind of hard to pinpoint where my love of swimming started and where my career started. They just kind of merged into one. Whether it's a backyard swimming pool, whether it's a lake, whether it's an ocean, where you find water, you find a Campbell, pretty much.
With 3 Olympics, 2 Commonwealth Games, 3 World Championships and multiple medals later, Kate Campbell is a big fish in the swimming world.
I was 16 at my first Olympics, which, looking back now, I just think, oh my gosh, you're so young. I got asked the question, oh, now you've become an Olympian at 16, you know, what's next? And I was like, what do you mean, what's next? I haven't achieved what I've wanted to, and I think that that's what's kept me in the sport for so long, is that I always think I can get better. If we track my personal bests in the 50 metres freestyle, in 12 years, I've improved 0.3 of a second. So it's slow and it takes a lot of patience, but I'm still improving.
But despite Kate's success in the pool, she was not immune from the effects of the sun.
I lived in Queensland for, the majority of my life, and outdoor swimming pools are pretty much the only swimming pools there. So I would train outdoors, morning and afternoon. I think that maybe I was a little bit blasé about some of the sun protection. I'd say, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I don't need sunscreen. And then you come out and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit red, but tomorrow it'll be fine. But every time you get that little bit red, there's like a little bit of damage that is happening.
Australia has the largest rate of skin cancer in the world, with 2 out of 3 Australians being diagnosed with some form of skin cancer in their lifetime. normally before the age of 70. So it's really important that we wear sun protection all year round to protect our skin from the UVA and UVB radiation.
So it had been about 3 years in between I'd done skin checks, and I ran into an old friend who I hadn't seen in ages, and he had like a massive scar on his forearm, and I said, "What happened?" And he was like, "I had a melanoma." And that day I booked myself in and went for a skin check.
Kate had stage 1 melanoma in her right arm from a mole that to her naked eye hadn't been any cause for concern. Her scar now reminds her of the importance of sun safety.
The first thing I put on is SPF, and it's the first thing I look for when I'm looking at any kind of skincare product. I'm like, does it have SPF protection? I have bottles of sunscreen tucked in every bag imaginable. A 10-minute walk, it takes 30 seconds to smear on some sunscreen.
So one of the myths that we normally hear about sun protection is one application in the morning is going to last us all day, and that is not necessarily the case. So we do recommend that to reapply every 2 hours, especially to do more often, so to be applying it frequently and liberally, I think is the key. We would be really looking for something that is a very high protection. It is broad spectrum, so in other words, it's really going to filter against the UVA, UVB. We want something that's dermatologically tested and something that feels really light and fluid onto the skin, not very, very heavy. You want something that's nice and light. The sun-sensitive formulation is a formula which is designed with a minimal amount of filters, especially chemical. So it's perfectly designed for a sensitive skin. We can then apply makeup directly over the top if need be.
Just make it a habit all year round. There's nothing wrong with putting SPF on your face, even if it's cloudy outside. It's like you brush your teeth in the morning. You brush your teeth in the morning, put some SPF on your face. It's as simple as that.
OK, Joe, this is one for you. Did you realise that animals hiccup just like us?
Well, my Labrador Daisy often gets the hiccups, actually. So,
Really?
yeah. So I did know that Labradors can.
Yeah, when they eat your couch, Joe, that tends to happen sometimes.
A little bit of indigestion from that.
Now, spiders and birds don't, Joe, because hiccups occur only in mammals that suckle their young.
I didn't know that. It's another weird and wonderful thing that humans do that's still shrouded in mystery. Why do we do it? How do we avoid them? And does standing on your head or getting a sudden fright really stop them?
All those questions will be answered, Joe, because when it comes to solving human health mysteries, Dr. Nick Carr is the man.
Of all the ridiculous things that human beings do, this one to me really takes the biscuit. Hiccups. I mean, really, what are they about? You're out at dinner with your partner, or maybe someone you hope is going to be your partner, halfway through the main course. I mean, where does this come from? Well, the answer, as is so often the case, is we don't really know. What we do know is that they're only found in mammals. Now, you'll remember that mammals are animals that suckle their young, feed the young breast milk. And there's a theory that hiccups are a way of nature burping the baby because it releases the trapped air and enables the baby to drink more. Just as we don't really understand what causes hiccups, we don't really know how to fix them. Now, hiccups are a reflex in the nervous system, and sometimes a fright will break that reflex. The other way we can sometimes stop hiccups is by increasing the level of carbon dioxide in the blood. And we can do that very simply just by holding our breath. But none of this worked for the world record holder of hiccuping. This is an American guy called Charles Osborne, and he hiccuped for an astonishing 68 years. That was an amazing 430 million or so of hiccups. What this man needed was Dr. Nick's special remedy for hiccups. Now, you've heard about drinking water from the wrong side of a cup, but my way of doing it requires you to drink water from the wrong side of the cup with your thumbs in your ears, like this. And it's so difficult, it breaks that nervous reflex arc. You see? No hiccups.
I don't know about about you guys, but I so appreciate a good hair day, especially when my hair cooperates and does these big, beautiful, beachy waves. Feel a bit like a mermaid. Now, sadly, I didn't actually just wake up with those beautiful beachy waves. As you can see, my hair naturally is quite straight and doesn't have that same volume, but I'm going to show you just how easy it is to create the ultimate beach wave look at home yourself with Lady Jane's Salon Pro Beach Wave Brush. Section your hair so it's easy to get to those underneath layers. And then get your beach waves brush, and we're going to hold it vertically, so either downwards or upwards, depending on what's easier for you holding your hairdryer at the same time. And if you put it behind your hair, the beach waves will go outwards from your face. And we're pretty much going to blow dry doing this barreled movement. So you twist it around the brush as you go down and just work your way around your head. The Beach Waves brush has a unique oval-shaped ceramic copper barrel that lets you create the perfect beach waves looks and helps minimise damage and speed up drying time. It also has mixed nylon filament and natural boar bristle brush to bring out your hair's natural shine. For expert professional results at home. You can keep using your fingers just to twirl those curls outwards if they start to come out. And then a final thing I would do to complete the beachy look is just throw your head upside down and give your roots a little tease. Well, the upside down flick is the perfect way to finish off that beachy wave look. Still can't believe we created this all with the Lady Jane Salon Pro Beach Waves brush.
See, you don't need to dunk your head in a salt bath or rub sand on your scalp to get the surfy look. Beach hair can be achieved from the air-conditioned comfort of your couch. I'm sure you want to know that, Darcy.
Thank you for that, Joe. I tell you, I'm planning on doing the real thing this summer. I'm very, very keen to get to the beach, Joe. I love it. The 4 kids get in the nippers. I'm obsessed with the salt water. So every day, get me in the sand, get me in the salt water. How about you? You're not a big beach fan, are you?
I like looking at the sea, running next to the sea. I like sort of just sitting by the sea. Don't like getting in the water. But you know what I'm going to do this summer?
What are you going to do, Joe?
I'm going to rediscover Melbourne's bars and cafes. I'm going to eat and drink al fresco to my heart's delight. I can't wait.
Single-handed stimulus package, Joe. We need it here in Victoria. That's our show for today. You can find out more great health tips and tricks by logging on to the House of Wellness website and by tuning into our radio show with our own Joe Stanley and GQ every Sunday. Plus, Joe and Emma Murray's podcast, The Best of You. If you haven't, we've been telling you every week to download it, get onto it from Podcast One. This week, make sure you do. Joe, what's happening?
Yes, and we have got a second season of Best of You in the House of Wellness coming up next year, so stay tuned for that.
Well done, Joe. Look forward to hearing all of that. As always, thanks to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. And until next time, stay safe and stay well.
Sharing time with friends.